Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have an interesting story out of the state of New York where the grandson of former President John F. Kennedy, Jack Schlossberg, is taking the steps to run for Congress in 2026. Now, in an article from Axios, it goes over the news that Schlossberg, a writer and grandson of President John F. Kennedy, said he is forming an exploratory committee to run for Congress in New York. Schlossberg is a high-profile figure in the Democratic Party who would likely bring additional attention to what is already expected to be a hotly contested race in the media capital of the U.S. The seat, which is currently the New York's 12th congressional district, is held by Representative Jerry Nadler, who said he would not be running for an 18th term a few weeks ago. In addition to Schlossberg, nonprofit CEO Liam Elkland and a state assemblyman Micah Lasher are also running for the seat. Several other Democrats, including former Representative Carolyn Maloney, State Assemblyman Alex Borres, and Tony Simone, City Councilman Eric Botcher, and actress and former gubernatorial candidate Cynthia Nixon are also seen as potential candidates. Schlossberg said in a recent post on X, "Hey guys, have formed an exploratory committee." The 32-year-old graduate of Yale and Harvard has worked as a political commentator and spoke at the Democratic National Convention in 2020 and 2024. He has been outspoken on social media and is something of a prolific poster on X, according to the article. Schlossberg also very recently made headlines for publicly clashing with his cousin, Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., over the latter's skepticism towards vaccines. Lasher is reportedly set to enter the race with support from Nadler, who's retiring amid grassroots pressure on older Democratic lawmakers to make room for a new generation of leaders. That support could be significant in a crowded Democratic primary field, and Nadler is seen as a still potent power broker in the district. Eklund has made headlines as a 26-year-old congressional candidate who dared to take on Nadler. And this is from Axios, and the article was written by Andrew Solander. So make sure to go check that out and give all the credit and such to him. So this is very interesting. First things first, this 12th district in New York is based entirely in the borough of Manhattan, and it's composed of the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, Midtown, Hell's Kitchen, Chelsea, Murray Hill, and Gramercy. The incumbent is Democrat Jerry Nadler, who was reelected with 80.6% of the vote in 2024. We'll be getting into the election results of this district in just a little bit. But first, as the article mentioned, the only Democrat declared right now is Liam Elkland, a nonprofit CEO. Micah Lasher, the state assemblyman from the 69th district, also is filing paperwork to run. Schlossberg running as the grandson of President John F. Kennedy Jr. certainly is going to bring a lot of money and name notoriety to this race. And I'm not too familiar with Elkland and Micah Lasher, and obviously without any polling data to go off of, it's hard to make a definitive statement on this race for sure, but I would imagine being the grandson of President John F. Kennedy would probably give Schlossberg, at very least, a strong start out for this campaign and potentially an early advantage in this race. Though, as the article correctly mentioned, with 3 potential candidates being in the race by the end of the month, and several other Democrats expressing interest, this could become a very competitive Democratic primary really quickly, and that could split the vote, so much so that even if Schlossberg starts out in first place, it may only be like by 1% or 2%, because that's how competitive it would be. Though, again, being the grandson of JFK, I think would give him at least a little bit of an advantage, especially in the fundraising department. So these are all the other Democrats interested in running, as the article mentioned: Alex Borres, Eric Botcher, Shabbos Kestenbaum, Carolyn Maloney, the former U.S. representative, Keith Powers, Tony Simone, and Whitney Tilson, with a lot of other Democratic candidates mentioned as potential candidates as well. We do know some Democrats that names have been floated as potential candidates are not running in this race, including Chelsea Clinton, who there was a rumor last week that she may be considering a run for this district. She's officially ruled it out, and the article and so even mentions as Schlossberg decided to run for this race. You also see other candidates in here, like some candidates for mayor of New York City in 2025 being mentioned that have ruled out running as well. As for the general election, it doesn't even mention which Republican candidates will run, as this race is listed as solved for the Democrats from Cook Political Report and Inside Elections back in February and March. And it's not really too much of a surprise. You can look here. We can zoom into the Manhattan area in New York. This district, the 12th district, is going to be right here. Jerry Nadler won it by 61 points in 2024. In 2022, again, a more Republican wave year, especially in the state of New York, this 12th district voted for Nadler by 63.8%. So pretty reliable for the Democrats, 2 elections in a row, 2024 and 2022. Now the map was redrawn a little bit differently in 2020, but the 12th district, Maloney, that represented it, won by 65.8. Now they're representing New York 10, and the districts kind of merged in the redistricting on that one. So that's what it looked like on that standpoint. In terms of the Cook PVI here, I'm going to try and zoom in, get you the correct rating here. This district, New York 12, is listed at Democrat plus 33. So of the ratings of 15 points or plus is safe for the Democrats. At Democrat plus 33, this is one of the most safe districts in all of the United States for the Democratic Party, and really not too much of a surprise why there's no talk about any major Republicans running in this race. Just to give you a look at the district itself on a map right here, again, Jerry Nadler right here got 81% to Michael K. Zumbluskas, 19% of the vote, and you can just see this is the region of Manhattan and New York where this is. Nadler in 2024 got 260,165 votes. Michael K. Zumbluskas got 62,989 of the total 323,154 votes. Obviously, Manhattan, a lot of people living in Manhattan, a lot of votes concentrated in a pretty small area, but that's what the numbers looked like in 2024. Lastly, in 2022, the same district, of the 245,694 votes, the same candidates, Jerry Nadler and Michael Zumbluskas, faced off. Nadler got 81.8% of the vote. Zumbluskas got 18%. 200,890 votes to 44,173. So obviously 2 elections in a row, very safe Democratic district. Obviously for 2026, my prediction for this race is going to be a safe Democratic win. The most competitive nature of this race is going to be what happens in the Democratic primary. Whether it's Schlossberg or any other Democrats running in this race, it's probably too early to say right now which Democrat is going to win the primary. I do think, at very least, being the grandson of JFK, it does give him a little bit of an advantage, but the Democratic primary is going to be the real contention point of this race. The general election should be a slam dunk for the Democrats to win. Just to give you an idea of where things currently stand on the House map, obviously redistricting and everything is still up in the air with Texas and now potentially Ohio, Missouri, California, Florida. Still very much to be determined. The latest 2026 consensus map on 270win.com, Republicans have 212 seats, Democrats 202, with about 21 up for grabs at this current point in time. Though again, expected to see House maps change over the next few months or so. When that happens, I'll be doing videos, of course, updating that news and the map as we go from there. But right now, Republicans hold about a 10-seat advantage with 21 seats up for grabs. So still very much to be determined whether Republicans or Democrats will hold the House in 2026. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Make sure to also leave a comment below telling me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today we have some news out of the Commonwealth of Virginia in its first congressional district, where Democrat Shannon Taylor officially launches a bid to represent the first district. So this article from the Virginia Mercury and written by Samantha Willis from September 8th goes over this information, that in Henrico County Commonwealth Attorney Shannon Taylor launched her bid for Congress on Monday morning, less than 3 months after losing the Democratic nomination for Virginia Attorney General to Jay Jones. Taylor now joins 9 other Democratic candidates, hoping to take on longtime Republican incumbent U.S. Representative Rob Whitman for the chance to represent Virginia's first congressional district starting in 2026. With a track record as a hardline prosecutor, Taylor was first elected to serve as Henrico Commonwealth's attorney in 2011 and has spent 3 terms in that role. She has run for statewide office twice now, both times in the Democratic primary for Attorney General. In 2021, facing Jones and Mark Herring, she withdrew from the race, and she chose not to run in order to focus on the critical issues happening in Henrico, from criminal justice reform to addressing long-standing systemic racism in our society. Herring won the nomination, but lost the seat to Jason Miyares, the Republican who is now running for re-election in the race in 2025. Taylor's loss to Jones in this year's Attorney General Democratic primary was also a very close one, with Jones narrowly defeating Taylor 51.5% to 48.8%, so really as close as you can get. Taylor has set her sights now on defeating the Republican Whitman, who has represented the 1st District since 2012. Which spans parts of Henrico, Hanover, and Chesterfield counties in central Virginia to the northern neck and middle peninsula of the area. There are over 471,000 registered voters in the district, according to the Virginia Public Access Project. So, Taylor entering this race also comes as a little bit of news, as there was a new Democratic internal poll that was conducted in this race. Now, obviously, take these numbers I'm about to tell you with a grain of salt, because the poll was conducted by the Democratic pollster Public Policy Polling, which is the official House Majority PAC poll of the Democrats. So this is probably the best the Democrats are ever going to look are going to come from this poll. And it shows Rob Whitman at 41%, Shannon Taylor at 40%, with 19% still undecided. Now, this is very significant. First, though, on the Democratic side, lots of Democrats are running in this race. Rob Whitman's the only Republican running. He's the U.S. representative. He'll be the Republican nominee. Democrats, Salim Bati, Lisa Verdeganova-Khanna's running, Andrew Lucetti, Amanda Pohl, Shannon Taylor, James Shea, Sean Sublette, and Melvin Tull are all running, as well as Erica Kopp filing paperwork as well. But it's very quickly become apparent that Shannon Taylor is the leading Democratic candidate in this race. Just looking at her endorsement list, she already has the endorsement of U.S. Senator Tim Kaine, U.S. Representatives Don Bayer, Suhas Subramanian from the 7th District, or from the 10th District, and Eugene Vindman from the 7th District. She has the endorsement of Mark Herring, the former Attorney General of Virginia, who narrowly lost in 2021, Terry McAuliffe, the former governor, Ralph Northam, the former governor, and Mary Sue Terry, former Attorney General of Virginia, as well as several state legislatures as well. So based on the endorsement list thus far, Shannon Taylor has the lead on this Democratic side. And given that it is many candidates running in this race, likely the vote's going to be split up among them by a significant amount, which could lead to Shannon Taylor opening up with a very large lead, as she is most likely the most high-profile candidate running in this race. Now on to the poll, where it's only a one-point race between Whitman and Taylor with 19% undecided. This is interesting because, for one, it is a Democratic poll, and the rule of thumb I use for Democratic or Republican internal polls, it's not always 100% accurate this way, but I usually built in about 5 points towards the party that the poll represents. Meaning, if Taylor here is only down by 1 point, I'm assuming that in the actuality, Whitman's probably leading by about 6 points or so, because it is an internal poll, and internal polling usually makes the, obviously, candidate they're representing look a lot better. But this internal poll, with a 1 point lead for Whitman over Taylor, at very least shows there is some potential for this race to maybe be competitive. Now, Cook Political Report, Inside Elections, and Sabla Crystal Ball all have this race listed as likely for the Republicans. So they don't believe this race is starting out in the really competitive category either. And when you look at the election history of this district, it makes a lot of sense. The first district, though, is listed at Republican +3 according to the Cook Political Voting Index from 2025, whereas Republican +6 in 2023. So this district has moved about 3 points towards the Democratic direction since the last two Cook PVIs. So that is very significant. Now, the election history has said a different story, though, where Whitman won in 2024 by 12.8% against the Democratic candidate. Back in 2022, he won by 13 points against the Democratic candidate. In 2020, this district was obviously drawn a lot differently, but he won by 16.4%. So Whitman, for some reason, this district that's only Republican +3, is seeming to win by double digits in the two most consecutive elections. Now, can 2026 be different is the question the Democrats are asking. Just refreshing here, the updated numbers from the 2026 generic congressional vote currently have the Democrats leading by 3.3%. Now, based on the 2024 results, though, seeing as Whitman won this race by 12.8%, just in a vacuum, if you shifted this race 3.3% towards the Democrats, Whitman would still have won this race by around 9.5% or so. So even then, this would still be a likely Republican win if it just shifted based on the generic ballot to that number. So Whitman's performance in 2024 is what the Democrats are hoping to capture here. Now, just for a moment, I'm going to go down the scenario of what if this race becomes competitive, what could it look like? Well, for one, it would have to involve Shannon Taylor being a strong enough Democratic candidate to break the trend in recent history of Rob Whitman winning by 10 points. And for Shannon Taylor to do that, she would have to look at the results of essentially what Whitman's been able to do in the last few elections and essentially break all the trends of this district. Even though the district, according to the Cook PVI, has gotten more blue, Whitman's performance has remained very consistent. So Taylor would essentially have to reinvent the map in a way that has not been done at the congressional level in a pretty long time in this first congressional district. Though even though it is the Democratic House poll, public policy polling, this 1 point lead for Whitman over Taylor at very least will put some eyes and potentially some fundraising on this race for the Democrats. Now, the Democrats obviously are in for a very tough fight with the Republicans for the House in 2026. Republicans in the updated rankings of 212 seats, Democrats have 202. This district for Virginia won, but Rob Whitman is currently listed as likely for the Republicans. And I do think it is likely for the GOP. That even in the Democrats' best case scenario, I think Republicans probably hold on and win this race. If for some reason the Republicans and Rob Whitman are losing this race come November of 2026, they're likely getting absolutely blown out across the 2026 House map, and the Democrats may be reaching like a massive number of House seats. So with that said, I think Rob Whitman's probably going to win in 2026, but it is listed as likely for the Republicans. Looking more in depth at this result in this district, Rob Whitman won in 2024 with 56.4% to the Democrat Leslie Meadows' 43.6%. The overall votes of the 478,000 or so votes cast was Rob Whitman with 269,657, Leslie Meadows 208,445. And when you look at the population of the counties in this district, Chesterfield is the largest in this district with 106,773 votes for the total district overall. Henrico Meta won 102,198 votes total, Democrat plus 9. Hanover was Whitman plus 32, James City plus 4, York plus 16, Gloucester plus 46, 38-45. So if playing the scenario of what can the Democrat Taylor do to try and win this district, first things first is I would attack the areas that are the most competitive in this district, that obviously the Democrat did not win. For one, for Taylor to win, she's going to have to boost the numbers of Henrico. Now, it is the second largest county in this district, right outside of Richmond. That is good for Shannon Taylor, but she's going to need to win by more than 9 points to have a realistic chance at winning this district. That's pretty much a given. But then the two close counties of Chesterfield, the largest county in this district, and James City, the fourth largest in the district, these have to be Democratic wins in this race in 2026 for Shannon Taylor to even have a chance at winning. Now, Whitman netted about 4,000 votes out of Chesterfield in this race in 2024. James City was about 4-point win, about 2,000 votes for Whitman in this area in 2024. So these are two key areas that Shannon Taylor needs to be targeting in a 2026 race. Now, it's totally possible that Shannon Taylor can win Chesterfield, win Henrico, and win James City and still lose this district. That's how Republican the rest of the district is. When you see areas that are not as big in population, but Richmond going 42 points, Kingston Queens 34, you see Matthews 48, I believe it's Pauquoson 55, Gloucester 46. These areas that are very red are going to be tough for Shannon Taylor to make a lot of inroads in. But if she can soften the margins a little bit while winning these close districts like Chesterfield and James City and maybe cutting into the margins in York and areas like Essex, maybe it's possible to get this race competitive. But when you start going county by county in this race, you see why it's more of a likely Republican district than a toss-up one, because there's a lot of smaller rural counties in this district that are a lot more red than the competitive areas that also narrowly in 2024, most of them voted red. So that's where things stand on the district for 2024. In 2022, things were not really that different. Here, Rob Whitman won 56%, Herb Jones, a Democrat, got 43%, and again, the counties were pretty similar. Though, in this one, Whitman won Chesterfield by +6, Henrico went for Jones, a Democrat, by 8, and James City was Republican +3. So relatively similar numbers to what it was in 2024. So for Shannon Taylor to win this race, she's going to have to do something that's not been done in a pretty long time in this district, win Chesterfield County, win James City, and try and make inroads in places like York County, Essex County, and really try and soften the red margins in this district. Just based on the 24 results, she needs about 60,000 votes net to win this race. On the 2022 numbers, midterm election, here it's a little bit more manageable. She needs about 44,000 votes based on the 2022 turnout numbers. Is it doable? Yes. Is it unlikely? Probably. But this is going to be an interesting race to watch for, as this is not a race that's expected to be one of the more super competitive ones. So if it becomes competitive in 2026, that could be a good sign for Democrats, but it's also an interesting one to watch for, as Virginia starts out the election very early on. I do believe its polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern Time obviously on the East Coast. So depending on how this race is going, if this is very close, that could be a big indicator in how the rest of the country is voting on election night 2026. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts and other video ideas you would like to see me go over. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video, where we have some news out of the state of Florida for the 2026 Florida Senate race, where a Democratic candidate has officially entered. Jennifer Jenkins is now officially entering this race and running against Republican incumbent Senator Ashley Moody. So bringing it all down here, in an article from Matt Dixon of NBC News, it mentions that Democrat Jennifer Jenkins has officially entered this race and details her history, including beating high-profile political opponents in the past. During her 2020 run for a school board seat in a conservative-leaning Southeast Florida county, Jenkins won by 10 percentage points over the Republican Tina Descovich, who would go on to become a co-founder of the Moms for Liberty movement, an influential national education group focused on parental choice. The win, especially by double-digit margins, was considered a significant upset at the time. Now, Jenkins will once again try and play political spoiler during the 2026 midterms. On Wednesday, she announced her bid for the Senate against U.S. Senator Ashley Moody, a Republican who was appointed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in January and was then quickly endorsed by President Donald Trump. Republicans have built a more than 1 million person voter registration advantage in Florida, one of the nation's largest one of the country's largest swing states, and are expected to have a heavy cash advantage over Democrats heading into the midterms, a dynamic Jenkins said she is prepared to go up against. I think being a non-traditional candidate who understands the struggles everyday people are going through will resonate across party lines, Jenkins told NBC. I think Democrats have conceded certain conservative parts of the state, and I think that is really obviously a bad choice. The Republican Party of Florida Chairman Evan Powers slammed Jenkins' record on a series of education-related culture war fights shortly after she entered the race, saying the best the Florida Dems could do is Jennifer Jenkins for Florida for Senate, who stands for forced masking of kids, men and women's sports, men and women's restrooms, he posted on X. If parents dared to question her judgment, she called them domestic terrorists. Moody's campaign and Moms for Liberty did not respond to a request for comment. The year that Jenkins won her Brevard County school board seat by 10 points, Trump won the county by nearly 17 points, which she said speaks to political crossover appeal in a state where Democrats have not won a Senate race since former Senator Bill Nelson's re-election in 2012. Jenkins, 38 years old, is a teacher and has been increasingly involved in statewide Democratic politics in recent years. She considered running against former U.S. Senator Marco Rubio in 2022 and has become an increasing presence in Democratic politics, notably playing Representative Katie Britt in a Saturday Night Live style skit at the party's statewide convention last year. But she enters the race already at a disadvantage. Moody has more than $2.2 million in the bank and the universal support of the White House and the Republican establishment in Florida. The RNC this month also used a little-known rule that will allow it to begin spending money on Moody's behalf during what would normally be considered primary season. Moody is now expected to face significant Republican opposition. So that's the latest on Jenkins entering this race. As for the race itself in Florida, this Senate race is up in 2026, and if you're I would say a very close observer of U.S. elections, you would know that this election is not usually taking place in this midterm cycle. This is a special election because Ashley Moody was appointed to fill the remainder of the term that was left by U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, who is now serving as President Trump's Secretary of State. So that's why there's a special election that we're up. There are lots of Republicans who are being considered for this race. Ultimately, Moody gets appointed. Moody is now declaring running for re-election. The only notable Republican that's talked about maybe running for this race would be U.S. Representative Corey Mills, though as President Trump has already endorsed Ashley Moody in this race, and she has the endorsement of Rick Scott and several U.S. representatives, she's probably not going to face much of a significant Republican fight, even if Corey Mills did ultimately decide to run. On the Democratic side, Jennifer Jenkins is officially the first Democrat to enter this race. Now, a long list of Democrats have filed paperwork to run for this race as well, most notably being Alan Grayson, the former U.S. representative from Florida's 9th District, as the most notable challenger. 4 other Democrats have also publicly expressed interest in this race, including Jerry Demings, the mayor of Orange County and husband of former U.S. Rep. Val Demings, Jared Moskowitz, the U.S. representative from Florida's 23rd district, who is currently running for re-election, but if his district got redistricted into a safe Republican one that he had no chance of winning, it wouldn't be impossible to imagine him jumping from running for re-election to potentially running for Senate. Angie Nixon, the state representative from the 13th district, and Alexander Vindman, a former director of European Affairs at the U.S. National Security Council. It should be worth noting another Democrat that was in this race was Josh Weil, who was the nominee for Florida's 6th district in the 2025 special election. A lot of media attention came out of that one. He ultimately withdrew from the race back towards the end of July. Right now, Jenkins does have the endorsement of former U.S. Representative Debbie Mercarsel-Powell in this race, who was the Democratic nominee for Senate in 2024 against Rick Scott. So, as rather this Democratic primary plays out, it's going to be interesting to see, for one, if any of these Democrats, Demings, Moskowitz, Nixon, or Vindman, ultimately jump into this race, as a lot of them probably have higher name recognition than Jennifer Jenkins does. But thus far, I think there is a real possibility Jenkins could become the Democratic candidate. But it's really contingent on if any of these other Democrats who do have history, at least being elected statewide in Florida, like U.S. Representative Grayson or Moskowitz or even potentially Jerry Demings, would it give a tough fight for Jenkins in this race? But even still, that's a conversation for a later day. Right now, it's too early to say which Democrat will win the primary. As Jenkins is the only Democrat currently in the race, I'll go off the assumption that she wins. As for the general election, though, this race is looking to be a very tough fight for the Democrats. Inside Elections has it as solid Republican, Cook Politico has it solid Republican, and Sabro Crystal Ball has it safe Republican, and this was all as of August, like mid-August of 2025. So pretty recent consensus on that. Rachel White House does have it listed as lean Republican from September 4th, 2025, but again, I think they're certainly the outlier in this regard. I think Republicans certainly favored to win by a large margin. Now in 2024, Rick Scott's Florida Senate race went to the Republicans by 12.8% against the Democrat Mercarsel-Powell. That is a likely Republican rating, but a pretty substantial one in that, especially as the early polling in this race looked like Rick Scott could potentially be in a little bit of trouble. Most of the rankings did have it as likely for the Republicans, but there were a few that did have it as lean for the Republicans, like Decision Desk HQ and Real Clear Politics. Now, the polling on this race heading into Election Day showed Rick Scott leading by about 4.7, 4.8% or so, depending on the poll you were looking at. Certainly a lean Republican lead, but not one you would really expect for Florida in 2024. You would expect Rick Scott to lead by a larger margin. Ultimately, the results ended up being a lot more of a larger margin when everything was said and done, but still worth noting that that was relatively competitive on terms of the polling. So it's possible we could see a Senate race in 2026 based on the 2024 one, where the polling ends up looking a lot more competitive and the race ultimately happens. We're heading into Election Day. It's possible this race could be a 5 to 6 point polling race for Moody versus Jenkins or any of the other Democrats. Democrats start saying they're going to win the race, and then on Election Day, Republicans turn out, end up winning by a lot. That's certainly very possible based on how 2024 ended up going. Now, for Marco Rubio in 2022, he defeated the Democrat Val Demings in this race by about 16 points, 57.68 to 41.27. Now, this race, kind of a sign of things to come, both in 2024 for Trump and for Rick Scott, showed Rubio doing really well, especially in Miami-Dade, in Palm Beach, in Hillsborough, in Tampa, and in Pinellas with St. Pete as well, and Clearwater. So it showed Republicans doing massive overperformances here, including making a lot of gains in the Orlando area as well. In this general election, also the predictions for this race were all likely Republican for Rubio. 538 did have it as solid. For the Republicans, Fox News, Real Clear Politics had it as lean. The polling, again, Rubio leading in this polling by about 8.8% on Real Clear Politics, 8.8 on 538, showing a likely Republican win. Ultimately, when everything was said and done, Rubio ended up winning by about 16 points. Now, obviously, 2022 and 2024 overall, one was a Republican expected to be a good midterm year. The other was a presidential election where Republicans ended up doing very well. In both instances, the polling in Florida seemed to underestimate the Republicans when everything was said and done. 43.2 for Demings, Rubio 52.1. It ended up being 41.27 for Demings, Rubio 57.6 0.68. So the last two Senate elections can tell us Republicans and Ashley Moody will probably outperform the final polling data based in 2026 based on the prior two election results, assuming everything remains the same. Now, in a different election environment, that may not be the case, but we can expect the Republicans are probably going to win here without too much of an issue in 2026. So for the 2026 Senate map, obviously this is not going to be too much of a surprise. I do have Florida starting out in the safe Republican column after we just saw Rick Scott win by about 14 points or so. I think we see Ashley Moody win by a little bit over 15 points in 2026. Yes, it is a Democratic expected midterm year, but then again, we've also seen Florida trend a lot to the Republican side in the last 10 years or so, and I think we're going to see Florida continue to be a solid GOP state. So Ashley Moody wins this state by more than 15 points in my latest prediction, which also has the Republicans at 51 Senate seats, Democrats at 45, with 4 left up for grabs. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts on any other future video ideas you would like to see me go over. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in a future video.